Hey everybody, welcome to Wild Hearts Wednesday. This is our Tamer Talk. I am one of your hosts, Chase. I am the Director of Communications, and joining me here is Dawn, our brand manager. And yeah, we're going to be talking about some exciting stuff today. Draft, as well as draft. We also have some changes to our starter set for the official core release. These are some big changes that I'm actually a huge fan of. We'll get into it, but yeah, there's some big stuff that I've been a big advocate for a while now. So it's really cool to see these changes. Any initial thoughts on how, like, just feeling wise on these changes?
No, I'm excited to see what people think of them as always, when we change things up and do things differently. So I'm excited to see what people think.
Right on. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump right into this. I will switch it over here, and so I've got the new fields. Well, not this one, but I've got fields pulled up. So some changes coming here. So we still have the basic fields that were in the starter set. So we got High Wind Falls here. So because it really combos great with Chrism, right? The waterfall and stuff like that. So the highest power creature gets that +3 power, right? That's a great one to have in the starter set. Big fan of it. Also, I just now made the connection that in the, I believe it's Giant Growth Alt Art from Foundations, the Chrism is standing underneath this waterfall. Like, that's
Is
pretty
indeed, yes.
that's pretty clever. So I like that. We also still have the All Overs Inlet. When a creature moves to this field, they gain +1 power. We still have that one here. I've got the Windy Plateau, which we had before, right? The big 5. This is the only 5 victory point field that we have in the game currently, and it's just a vanilla. There's no special effect to this one at all. And then the same for, I believe there it is. We have the Calm Brook, which is basically the exact reverse of the Windy Plateau. It's a 2 victory point vanilla, which 2 is the lowest that we can go for balance purposes, right? Because you want your victory points when you picking your fields. If you're picking low victory point scoring fields, you're probably running a lot of like victory point scoring cards, right? But when you're picking those high victory point fields, you're probably not having a whole lot of those. You're just kind of relying on your favorites, might and ferocity. Those big, powerful creatures. Would you agree with that? You typically go for the higher victory point fields, or are you more of a middle of the road kind of 3 and 4s?
No, it kind of depends on what familiars I'm playing and what I'm going for, but it's kind of the middle of the road.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know if I'm bringing the Chrism, I'm probably bringing the 5 victory point field because I actually prefer that over running him with the falls. So the High Wind Fall. Just I know he can score this one pretty easily, but I don't know, 3 victory points when I could be scoring 5 victory points. So it's just kind of, but or I could just run both. But the alternative would be something like the Flowerfield Meadow, right, which is a 4 vanilla, so you don't have to worry about something if your opponent's also bringing a super aggressive deck, and you don't want to and if they start snowballing and scoring that field more than you can, then you're going to be in a world of hurt. So sometimes bringing a 4 might be a little bit better for those kind of instances. And then we have the High Grass, which is another one of our new ones here. It's just a vanilla 3. If none of the 3s that we have in the game so far revealed don't really mesh with your style, right? Because we have what is it? The Haunted Glade, right? Where it like KOs the creature with the weakest power. Yeah, depending on your strategy, that might be detrimental. Is there any time that you would think that you would want to run a vanilla 3 over any of the other ones?
Well, as you mentioned, sometimes, depending on what familiars or what your deck is built around, you might not want that detrimental effect potentially. So that could be a case for just running a kind of vanilla field that doesn't have any effect. Um, but I would say sometimes you actually might not want your opponent to be scoring as much either. So maybe kind of bringing some of those lower fields and fighting it out for more points, or as you said, if you're including cards that give you victory points for certain effects. You can actually gain some of your victory points in that aspect rather than just winning the fields and going for victory points that way.
Makes sense. Yeah. Uh, you could pick some that are like real weird niche. Like, oh, my opponent might not be able to play around this. I can't either really, but I could maybe a little bit. But if your opponent can play around those detrimental effects and you can't really, then yeah, maybe bringing the vanilla is the way to go, because that plan could backfire potentially really bad. Especially, yeah, bringing like the haunted glade, and they have like a bunch of KO effects, and they're like, oh yeah, I'll put all my KO effects in that field. Let's go.
Yeah,
And you're
exactly.
like, oh no, this plan has backfired severely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if your deck isn't running KO effects that could utilize that Haunted Glade, then maybe you want to opt for more of a vanilla field, whereas you're just trying to go for those points instead of trying to benefit from the effects yourself as well.
Right. Yep. All right. So I believe that is it for our fields. Yeah, just the two new ones there, and the vanilla 2 and the 3. So what we have next is I'm going to bring up the mod, and we can see. There we go. Oh, reconnect. Been too long. All right. So I've got the Might special deck pulled up, and thankfully I didn't hit the shuffle button, so they're all in a pretty good order here of what's available. And basically what we're doing is you still have the pre-built decks that we had before, but in addition to that, on the side, every card that's a one of in the decks, we have the second copy of it available. So when you want to just right out the gate start deck building a little bit, you can do that with what we have here. So yeah, just for the one ofs here, we got the Foxtail necklace, which clearly you're a huge fan of for reasons. So having the second copy of that, I mean, that's your ramp, your main ramp, right, for special. We have the Take Flight, which is a great one to have for special. Yep, there it is. Yeah, has the tattoo of the necklace. So yeah, Take Flight. What I really like about Take Flight is the support. If you exhaust this to play a Tamer card, you may move or deploy a friendly familiar. Being able to deploy familiars that get KO'd or sent back to the bench is huge. So being able to work around a card like this is really nice. Terrorchick, I'm a huge fan of Terrorchick. If I'm bringing Might, I'm bringing me a Terrorchick. Guardian and Debut give another friendly creature block. So just a great little soak up the detrimental effects card. Having that second copy. Strength Training is the zero cost strength training. So give a friendly creature +2 power, and then the support, give a friendly creature +1 power. This is a great card to help you slow play a little bit. I say slow play as not a detrimental thing, because if you're in a tournament, your opponent's slow playing, that's a huge deal. This is more just allowing you to react to what your opponent's going to do. I'm just going to play this card, and now it's your turn. Now you have to do something, right? I was able to play behind a little bit, and I really like strength training for that reason. So having that second copy, pretty huge. And then the Unity Tactics is one of the big old blowout cards, potentially, for Might. Giving all your friendly ally gains +2 power and block. And then if you have 6 or more creatures, so you can include your familiars in the second part, with block, gain 2 VP. Yeah, basically giving your entire field block and +2 power. I feel like if you can't win at that point, if you can, especially if you can get this out maybe turn 3, maybe turn 4, but getting good value out of it early on, that could be really, really great. Which one of those? If I had to pick one card that I'm glad that I immediately get to alter my deck building just out the gate with the starter decks, the one card out of the special and Might section. Man, that's a tough one. God, they're all so good, right? Foxtail is great. Terrorchick is great. Strength Training is great. I think I'd go with the Terrorchick, because I'm the big tent pole kind of player. I like to have my big beefy familiars, and being able to give them block as well as throw a Guardian out there. That's my go-to there. Out of those, which one is your go-to that you're immediately throwing and altering your deck with?
I mean, it's probably got to be foxtail necklace. No surprise there, but strength training as well is another one that I really like. So, going for those kind of zero cost, low cost stuff. Yeah, like you said, you get to kind of make your opponent because of alternating actions. You play something for zero, you kind of make your opponent respond, and it allows you to be able to kind of do more stuff sometimes in the sequence of events in a round. So, yeah, very exciting change there. I like the aspect of um, being able to include all of these cards in the starter decks, in the starter sets, so that you actually can try out some deck building, switch some cards in and out, and actually, try out what is it like having only one copy of a card, or is it better to have two? Or what, maybe I like this other card more, as we've talked about the difference in what we would pick already, right? So even just in the starter decks, having that flexibility, it's also a great way to kind of teach the skill a little bit of being able to deck build and switch cards out. So before you're jumping into the full game and building your own deck, you can actually try out switching those cards around, and that aspect of deck building with the starter set now, with what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's like deck building with training wheels for those fresh into it. You don't want to like severely like mess up your ratios or your curve, right? And you're like, okay, well, I'm limited on what I can do here, so I can only make a couple changes. But in doing so, it shouldn't. In theory, it shouldn't mess up your curve too much. Unless I also did miss the Blisterno here is another one of here. Just a cool card that it really synergizes with special as well. So debut game block, ongoing before scoring, give an opposing creature in this field -1 power for each card you played this round. And of course, special having all those special attack tokens that you put into your deck. You can really just snowball the amount of cards that you can play in one turn. From Blisterno there, or from one round. But yeah, just being able to swap those out. I mean, if you went a little heavy on the threes, you might have problems. Like if you drop your ones and your twos and you're adding in both extra copies of threes, and now you're running, what is that, eight 3-cost cards, you might struggle a little bit there on your curve for sure. But even that said, like, you could probably still get away with it, right? With a mulligan and everything like that, you could probably still be okay. Yeah, so thankfully you can't go any further than that, because then you're definitely struggling. But yeah, the training wheels is really nice, and you just read through your cards and be like, well, I don't really like this card. It doesn't really synergize with how I like to play, so I'm just gonna drop these cards out and then throw in these couple extra cards. Like, I love it's such a simple thing, but it helps the player and the mindset of the player a lot, I think. At least in
Yeah.
my personal opinion. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, real quick before we move on to the next deck as well, just one point of adding in these extra copies of cards. It helps build your collection as well. So if you want to use these cards in a deck that you put together that's not the starter deck, you'll actually have the 2 copies, which is the max that you can play in a deck. So it kind of helps build up your collection, so you're not having to go find a single copy of those cards or get multiple starter sets just to complete that collection for yourself as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's part of a trading card game, right? In a nutshell, is you want to do trades, but when it comes to starter decks, like, they're guaranteed cards that you're gonna get. Like, who's gonna trade you those cards that they also only have one copy of? The original plan was, of course, to have all these cards also in set 1 and have a big old, like, giant booster box of all these cards, basically, except for, I believe, the familiars. But that's kind of going away. So making sure that people get the guarantees out of a single starter deck box is pretty crucial. And I'm pretty sure I can say that. If I get flamed later, in PM from the rest of the team, they'll be like, really, really, Chase? But, like, I feel like this part is pretty set in stone. That's why we're making these changes. So these cards will not be included then in the main set release that we're going to start doing. And that's why we're making these changes. And so just completely because that's also one of the problems I kind of had a little bit with the initial plan was like, oh, well, I have play sets of all these cards from the starter deck. Like, why would I want to then start pulling, a million duplicates of these cards I already have play sets of? Well, now that problem has been alleviated. So, and that's kind of a mixed bag, I feel like. I'm not sure what your opinion of that is. I've come from other TCGs where it's like you buy the starter deck, and that's it. Those cards aren't available in a main set. They might be like a promo alt art or something like that, or a reprint set in the future for cards that maybe people want like an alternate art or a high rarity version of it. But yeah, I come from games where no, you buy the starter deck and that's it. That's the only way to get these cards. But I know other games they're like, oh no, you can get all these cards in the main set. Like, then why would I want to buy the starter deck? Like, I don't know. It's just a interesting way to go about it. So every card game is different, and I think that's kind of wild. Like, there is no set standard on releasing decks and stuff like that. What's your experience though with that whole thing?
I've definitely seen both sides of it in my experience with card games, so it's kind of an interesting concept. I don't think that I particularly care one way or the other myself, just because I tend to be someone who just tries to build like meta decks. So if the cards include, those like decks or cards from the starter decks, then I'm going to go out and get the starter decks. If they don't and they're just from the sets, then I'm just going to focus on that because for me personally, again, I tend to just build meta decks. So I'm just looking for those very specific cards. Um, so for me, it's kind of, six one way, half dozen the other. But yeah, I think it's a fine concept in itself. And, you know, I think it is a good reason for having the starter decks as well. Plus, you get to play with different cards, and that's something that I feel like is something that's really important. Is that sometimes you get to play those starter decks and actually play out some cards, and then you can't get those cards somewhere else. Which, in terms of, as you mentioned, kind of collecting. You're not opening a bunch of duplicates and being like, oh, wow, these are starter deck cards. Like, I don't want to open those in packs, right? Which is kind of a big problem. And the other thing that comes to mind is it actually makes the starter decks feel more unique and more interesting and kind of like their own product, right? They're not just, oh, let's throw a bunch of these cards in and then call it a starter deck. It's actually this is to get you started in the game, and then you can go get other cards beyond that as well. So there definitely are some pros and benefits to doing it this way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and yeah, like you're saying, I mean, you could always go buy singles of the stuff that you're missing, but that would, I feel like, because that's kind of awkward, especially with an indie TCG, right? It's if you're playing a big time TCG, sure, like you can go buy singles because there's been a million packs opened of one of the big three, so finding singles online is doable. But in a smaller TCG, it can be a little bit more difficult. I mean, I know we've traded and stuff like that in the past, and so it's possible. I've traded with people at locals that also play Wildhearts. And that's even coming from me. I don't have every card, so having this alleviate that. Like, I think that's wonderful. Just I can buy the starter set, and I have play sets of all these cards. I will never need to buy more copies of these cards out, and I will never have the the detrimental feeling of opening just duplicate after duplicate after duplicate. So I'm a big fan of that. And yeah, the starter set, of course, it's the starter set, so it gets everything you need to play every single style that we have immediately, and then even tweak it a little bit. So I do have the tactics and ferocity pulled up here. So a quick rundown of the cards that will now have their duplicates. Judge's Decree. We'll have Momentum Shift. We'll have Ambush. That appears to be it for ferocity. And then coming over here into tactics, we'll have Lucky Hat and the Ballast Whistle, and then the Hidden Powers. I believe that is it. Yeah. So right off the bat, couple there, I'm like, oh yes, Lucky Hat. Like I want my second copy of Lucky Hat. It's just so good. Being able to reduce the play cost of a card from your hand is great. Also, that support effect, drawing a card. If you can get this early game, that's a lot of great draw power that you can have there. One of the big ones is for me is like momentum shift. Cool support, give a familiar block, really good one to combine with that might card that we're talking about earlier. The unity tactics, right, where you need block on your familiars to kind of help add to the number that's required. But also being able to steal all the plus power that they have and force them back to the bench. Like, it's almost a bit of removal as well, which, removing your opponent's stuff in Ferocity might be a little bit more difficult, because there's not really, that many choices available. There are a few, but none that can really deal with familiars, I would say. Ambush is a really cool card, but in the starter deck, like a one of makes sense because you're not really built around being able to play duplicates unless you're running, of course, the Owl, which is in the starter deck, so it works. But being able to then have that second copy, then you can start changing up your ratios and things like that moving forward. So that flexibility is really nice. The ballast whistle is really cool, but again, it's one of those like, well, you need to make sure your ratios are worth it. If you've got a deck full of one cost creatures and you're revealing 5 to play off the ballast, and you're like, I just paid 3 and I'm only going to get 2 one-cost creatures off this. Like, that feels terrible. But if you're throwing in that second ballast whistle, I'm sure your ratios are more adequately balanced around having being able to play the ballast whistle and actually getting some good, powerful hits off of it. And then the hidden powers, another one that's a little bit more, niche depending on how you're doing. Move a friendly creature and ignore and Guardian KO the opposing ally with the highest power in their field, giving you a little bit of movement in tactics. So a little bit of movement here and there between all the different styles, just about. So it's another one of those, it could be niche, but then depending on how your build is. So I like the flexibility there. So again, if I was to pick one card out of these, I love Judge's Decree. Judge's Decree was like one of those big ones that I was a big fan of, but it does not synergize with a lot of play styles, so not having it at 2 might be a little overkill at times, but depending on the strategy you're running, of course, it could synergize really well. But I don't think anything beats the Lucky Hat for me here. Like, being able to reduce the play cost. I mean, turn 1, I could play a 3-cost card on turn 1 with this, or I can just get that extra draw, especially if I don't get that bonus card for going first if I'm going second, right? And I really need that extra draw, then Lucky Hat's great. So I like how it really, really helps a ton. Which one is your go-to out of all those that you're super thankful that you're going to get your playset of right out the gate?
It's got to be Judge's Decree for me. I mean, Ferocity is my favorite style anyways, but Judge's Decree, if I'm putting that in the deck, I want to play it. So for me, I like the idea of being able to run 2 copies, so I have that better chance of actually drawing it and getting to play it.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely feel it. Like, if your deck, your familiars and stuff like that are really like able to capitalize on a Judge's Decree, then yeah, having that second copy, so you're guaranteeing, well, just about guaranteeing that you're going to see it every game, is huge. I played one of my first favorite decks was the Infernander with the Chrism. I eventually did drop the Infernander out for the Skyson just because it was a little bit easier to get him up to that 8 power. But yeah, it was just like, I'm just going to put out these really high-scoring fields. I'm going to drop my Chrism, and then my other, big bad familiar, maybe play a strength training or something like that to boost them up, and then boom, slam down Judge's Decree. I win both fields, like, right there, boom. I'm at 9 victory points that I gain off of that one Judge's Decree. So when you can set those plays up, oh, it feels so good. I do love me some Judge's Decree.
You can be smart and play it that way, like Chase is talking about, or you can just love the card and say, I'm just going to play it anyways, even if I don't get the most optimal plays from it, which I have done. And I was like, I'm just playing this anyways. It was probably not the best play. Probably should have held it or not played it at all. But I was just so excited to play it that I had to do it. So There's the optimal, take advantage of it and play it with the best familiars and capitalize on it, get the most victory points that you can, block your opponent from doing anything, all of that. And then there's the I'm just going to play it because it's a cool card and I want to do it.
That is probably the most ferocity thing I think I've ever heard you say. Passion all the way. Like, it's just full
That's
ferocity. We're
right.
just going
All
at it.
in.
Yeah, and just, yep, that is a very ferocity comment to make for
And,
sure.
and that is why I love ferocity and it's my favorite.
Yep, passion over anything else. I love it. Also, another use for it, I just want to caveat off of that, is maybe you don't have the optimal play. Maybe you have a terrible hand and you are about to get crushed this round, and you're going first. You're like, I have no good plays. What am I going to do? I'm just going to end the round before my opponent can smoke me, right? Just like,
Very true. Yeah.
oh, maybe I can at least win one field off of this. Choose a field, play a random card from your hand to that field, then discard a random card from your hand in the Tamer phase. Like, maybe I can just eke out a win here if I can prevent my opponent from doing any plays and then just take at least one field. I've definitely been in that situation before, for sure. So having that little bit of flexibility there is pretty clutch. So yeah, Judge's Decree, also a great one. Yeah, that was definitely be probably my secondary pick after the Lucky Hat. Lucky Hat is just one of those, like, oh, I could just get value out of this, like, at any time. Like, if I'm putting Lucky Hat in a deck, I'm gonna get value out of it. So whenever I play it, but it's also kind of it's not as big and flashy, right? And not like Judge's Decree, and the Judge's Decree hits the table and the opponent's like, all right, cool. Like, I don't get to do anything this round. Like, dang it. So
That's it. Phase is over. No more.
yeah. Whereas the opponent plays the Lucky Hat, and you're like, okay, so they're going to do something a little bit neat and maybe something powerful, or they're just trying to slow play me. Like, it's not a super big, like, impactful mentally as someone slamming down a Judge's Decree against you. So yeah, those are the changes to the starter decks. We're getting doubles of all those cards. Really great to see it. We're getting the 2 extra fields. So what does all this amount to, right? So we're going to go into the changes. Well, not really changes, but we're finally going to be able to announce the rules for draft and how draft is going to work. And I think a lot of people are going to be really surprised by this. I know I was when it was revealed to me. And I think it's really clever. I know stuff like this exists out there, but I've never played in a draft like this. I've only ever played a draft at like a locals where you actually buy the packs and you're cracking packs and drafting with players like that. But this is apparently pretty popular at home games, where people use their existing collection to build up essentially what equivalents to packs. I'll just go ahead and read off what we have here. So basically how you're going to build the draft decks is you're going to add up to 2 copies of each common and uncommon familiar. Some of them are, of course, we have like rares and things like that. So add 1 copy of each rare or higher familiar to the familiar draft deck, and then you're going to have up to 2 copies of each common and uncommon field, 1 common or 1 copy of each rare higher field, and so that's going to be your field draft deck, and then add up to 3 copies of each common card of each style, and then the uncommons are going to be add up to 2 copies of each uncommon, and then 1 copy of each rare, right? And then those are going to be your different decks of all those same kind of cards, right? And then once these decks are made, you're going to shuffle them up and then deal each player 1 familiar, 1 field, 6 common cards, 3 uncommon cards, and 1 rare cards. Players will set aside their familiar and their field that they get, and then you're going to go through the normal draft stuff. So essentially what you did is you made these piles and you dealt them out, and then boom, now you have essentially a booster pack of cards in your hand, right, of all the right ratios that a booster pack would have, and you're basically just taking your entire collection and putting it all together, which for those people that like to keep cards in their binders, maybe they're not going to be a huge fan of this idea. But people that are big draft fans, I think, will love this because like I can just keep drafting over and over. Like I can only ever play draft, and just with my same collection, I never actually have to keep buying packs over and over, which I know sometimes is a huge big fun thing. Buy a booster box and then draft with your buddies, but times are hard, so maybe just reusing our collection over and over kind of works out. So yeah, then you're just gonna take turns drafting one card, then passing the remaining cards clockwise until all 10 cards have been chosen by a player. You're gonna repeat this 2 more times, each time changing directions cards are passed. Players may look at cards that they have drafted, of course, and all the other normal draft rules there. After 3 rounds of drafting, players will have 30 cards. You must choose 2 fields. One if it's a 4-player game, right? So your 4-player free-for-alls or your 2-player co-op games and things like that, your tag teams, that sort of fun stuff. And what's crazy about this is you can mix and match your color, your styles. Sorry, I did not say that. Your styles. You can mix and match your styles. So your deck combos can get wild in some of the stuff that you can do, right? I mean, being able to run all 4 styles in one deck, combos that would normally be impossible that you can now do. So yeah, I think that is one of the craziest things. I've played another TCG in the past, right? Coming from Digimon, where when you play a pre-release, that's how they work. You play sealed, so you get your 6 booster packs, and then you build a deck from the 6 booster packs. But there's no color requirements for that, and so that we're doing the same thing here with our styles. Is there's no restriction when deck building like that, because it can be really hard to get 30 cards out of X amount of booster packs of just the styles of the 2 styles that you choose for your familiars. So I really like that, especially if you draft, I don't know, like 2 Might familiars and you're like, oh well, I didn't draft any Might cards, like what do I do? But so it works out with using the unlimiting rule on the styles there. What's your take on doing it like this? Like I said, this is very new and fresh for me.
Yeah, actually, so for those who might not be familiar, I learned to play some card games when I was about 7 and 8 years old. So I've been playing card games for a very long time. Growing up, my parents owned a shop and sold Magic cards and everything like that. So we definitely did this kind of at-home drafting style. And so for me, I'm like, this is what I grew up on, right? We would have different boxes with varying rarities. Sometimes we would do what's called like a gold draft, which was like all of the highest rarity cards, and then you just play with all of those. You can do like a pauper style, which is all of the lowest cost rarity. But this kind of takes that middle ground and says, here you're taking the rarities, you're basically dividing it up as if it were opening a pack. But there's some really great benefits doing it this way. One is that only one person needs the collection, or if you have, some people that you're playing with, if you don't have a full collection, you can always combine your collections to make that kind of draft, that draft box, that draft collection of cards to divvy up between everybody in play, and then just, split the cards back up at the end when you're finished back to their proper owners. So you can do it like, one person has all the cards, or everybody contributes some cards to play with, which is great feeling. And yeah, it is kind of a money saver if you've already bought in cards. You don't have to go out and buy those packs. You can play with what you already have. And it's just another way to use the cards that you already have in a different way. And another great thing that I love about this is that with the way that Wildhearts works, there is no sort of like land or mana or resource that is put into your deck. The way that the resource system works is any card can be used as a resource each phase. So you're applying those either face up, maximum of 3 if they have supports on them, or you're just playing them face down as just a regular resource card. So I think that alleviates some of the issue with mixing all of the styles. So a big thing with draft where, in some other games that have those kind of resources put into the deck is, and the card that you get passed at the very end of the pack is like, this doesn't mix with the stuff I'm already running, the stuff I'm drafting. So it just becomes a sideboard card or something else. But because you're drafting the exact amount of cards that you need to build your deck and you're using all of that, um, it just makes it a lot easier where those cards actually can be used and they become a bit more valuable because of the resource system and putting all of the styles in one deck. So, you might end up with maybe only a small percentage of cards that don't maybe fit in the same styles that you initially were drafting. But I think that does make it so that, yeah, if you end up with a couple of cards that don't fit the styles you were drafting, that's okay. You can still end up playing them and it's going to be fine. And as you said, creates some really interesting interactions that you can't have in like a constructed format where you're only using two styles or potentially even one style.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, really neat what you're talking about, like the different, like when you're growing up, the different boxes. So you could have, I mean, you could really change up your drafting, right? It's like, okay. And it's an at home thing. So you can like be like, okay, this card, no one likes playing with this card. We're gonna keep this card out, right? You can do that sort of thing if you want to play with like a certain range of sets. So you can as packs come out, right, and releases and stuff like that, your collection grows. So you can just keep adding in all these cards into your collection, and your just draft goes bigger and bigger and bigger. But you can also, control it. So it's like, okay, well, I don't want to use any of the starter deck cards. I'm not going to use any of the starter deck cards. We have enough cards that have come out since the initial release that we don't need to use those cards anymore. We're going to keep it a little bit more fresh and use more recent cards. Like, you can do that. I think that's really it's your game. You can control it however you like. I think that's a really neat way to go about it. Aside from, your typical like, oh, we're only playing with cards from the latest set. Like all these cards from this one set. That's all we're playing with. No. You can, like,
Yeah.
it's such a crazy, like, really neat thing that you can do of different combinations of sets and things like that. So I know I'm looking forward to it, doing a big old tournament like that, or I guess not a tournament, but big old 4-player game draft with one big collection. So I've got the card pool pulled up, right? So this is everything from the starter sets as well as the cards that we've revealed so far that are going to be in the initial core set launch. Now, there is going to be a few others that are going to be added, but we haven't revealed those cards yet. We're still trying to figure out the right time where we want to really start showing off some of the new cards again. I know it's been a bit. Well, we did reveal the Vesperoon, right, last Tamer talk. So we have actually got to reveal something new recently, which has been great. I got to use it in the community night, like right afterwards, and I was like, yes, this is great. But out of everything that we know so far, the general public knows so far, like, what are some of the cards that you really, really gravitate towards when drafting, that you really hope you pull?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's really tough. And I mean, I feel like it's kind of the cards that we already talked about somewhat, but I also really like the jellies. So the jelly canes, I really like a lot. Um, yeah, there you go, the gel ices. All of the jellies I love. The Silphunk right there, that next to the gel ice as well. That's another one that I really enjoy. Of course, I'm picking ferocity cards because that's, again, my favorite. So I'm going to tend towards those. Fury Potion, another one for me. But yeah, those are kind of the handful. Plus, if I can pull something like a Judge's Decree, amazing. Yes, I want to play that even in draft. Because I'm a sicko like that, and I want to do it. But I know, just the head shake of shame. That's right.
They're still playing. There's still plan here. I'm just gonna play the cool stuff. I'm just gonna play it, even if it doesn't make sense. I'm gonna do it.
That's right. That's right. Because that's the way I draft. I don't draft for the optimal like draft choices. I draft on what I think is going to be cool, what I think is going to be fun, and So those are kind of the cards that I lean to that come to my mind immediately. I mean, if I really sat down and combed through the entire collection here and looked, and maybe I could pick out a few more that I'd be like, okay, I really want these in draft. But you know, that's another thing that I really love about draft is there's so many different ways to draft, right? There's so many ways to go about drafting. Um, are you playing this in a setting where you are keeping the cards that you draft and you want to just pick for collection purposes? So you're going to take like the highest rarity cards. Are you drafting for the purpose of winning an event that you're at? Let's say that, you're doing like a draft tournament and you want to win. So you're going to pick the most optimal cards or the cards that you feel like can fit the best together. Are you just drafting based on cards that appeal to you based on their art or the cool factor, right? Kind of like me with Judge's Decree. I'm like, I don't care if it's the best or not. I love that card. I want to pick it. I want to play it. It's fun, right? So you're just picking cards based on that. Are you playing a game at home with your friends or family and you're doing a certain thing? You're looking for certain cards that you want to play against a certain family member or friend because you know how they play and you're trying to beat them this time. And so you're trying to draft in that manner. There's just so many ways to draft. So that's the way that I personally like to draft is just what do I kind of think is cool? What do I think is fun? And not necessarily like what's the most optimal or best cards or what do I think are going to be the best cards together.
Wow, what a polar opposite. Now, okay, the pulling the rare card, I totally understand that. Like, it's like this card is, really rare. Maybe it'll be worth a lot of money, all right? It's like, but it is garbage in draft because if you can't build around it, right? You're like, what? Why? Like, this is terrible to use. But it's $40 on TCG Player. Like, like that covers my entire draft entry fee. Like, yeah, like maybe that would be the one to pull. But besides that, for me, it's like there's a couple like things I gotta check off in my brain when I'm drafting. One, certain familiars that you have to build around could be really kind of awkward. Just like gonna point at a few here. The Glacier Fly debut, you may reset an ally in this field. Like that can be cool. That's nice and generic. It's only 3 power though, and then ongoing when scoring, add Glacier Fly's power to each adjacent field instead. If you don't draft any of the like the big like power gaining cards, like this kind of really loses its viability in my mind. And then kind of like the Kindolf as well. If it's targeted by a Tamer card, it gains +1 power and you draw a card. If you don't draft any Tamer cards that can target him, like his viability goes way down for me. So I'm looking typically at cards that are going to be really generic. So like the Tornado, I can debut swap 2 friendly creatures in fields. Like, okay. And it's a may. It's not even a must. So the flexibility there is great. And then ongoing, as an action, you may discard a card from your hand to deploy the Tornado. Like having a just innate built-in way to redeploy is great because you don't know what your opponents are going to draft. If they draft a lot of removal, then this ongoing is going to be super, super crucial. But even if they don't, it's still a solid card that can just do what it wants to do without really much interaction. And that's kind of like my thought process on drafting like familiars and things like that of what to go with. But when it comes to like main set stuff, again, it's like what in a vacuum without having to rely on other cards is the way to go. Like the Red Panda Shadoon here, adorable. But if I don't pull any item cards, like this is terrible, right? So unfortunately, while yeah, it's a great card in the right deck and absolutely adorable art, I would never draft this just because of the like having to build around it could be really, really rough. Whereas the Terror Chick and the Ignition give friendly familiars +1 power. It doesn't matter what you draft. You're gonna have 2 familiars, so you're always gonna get the value out of that. So, when it comes to drafting, like that's usually my mindset of, am I guaranteed to have the interaction with this card, right? Like the Skyer, I know my opponent's gonna be playing familiars and allies, so I know I'm gonna get use out of the Skyer. Like I'm gonna be able to send them back to the bench and whatnot. And yeah, that's just kind of my thought. I know the Tortu here. Gain block, give another friendly creature with block gains +1 power. But if you're not running any block stuff, like this is going to lose a lot of value there. You're just dropping a 2/4 without much, other use besides that. So that's just kind of my thoughts there when it comes to draft. Is plan accordingly when picking your cards. Of is it going to get used or not if I don't draft the other cards that are going to be helpful. So that's just my 2 cents, though. That's, again, a polar opposite of you, and you're like, no, pick the pretty stuff, pick the stuff I like, the cool stuff. Yeah.
See, here's what you're missing. You pick the Shadoon, and then you change up your strategy where now you start picking items. So then you do have that. And then you're like, see, I picked the Shadoon because I like it, and now I have the items to go with it. See?
But what if there are no item cards to draft? What if everyone else picks the item cards first and then they pass and you're like, oh, there's no item cards here? That's my fear. It's just like I have the worst luck. So I always pick like, give me the draw cards, right? Because maybe I can draw my way out of this predicament that I'm in right now. Because if it's relying on top decking from the beginning of the round, I get 2 cards. Maybe I'll get the one I want. Nope. All right. Give me the Alistair's Guide. I need to be able to look at 4 cards and pick 2 because my luck sucks. Okay, so I'm absolutely picking like drawing cards and cards that I don't need any other combo. Oh, thank God. I can't do combos because I'll never see the combo pieces. So let me get the most generic stuff I can possibly draft. And that's usually how I approach it. And you know what? I often get crushed by those people that they had the luck. They drafted the perfect combo pieces, and I'm just like, must be nice.
Oh, Chase. The good old school RNG excuse. I like it.
It is what it is. Yeah, I've gotten bit too many times and burned too many times, so it's just, all right, we'll just be boring about it and play the super, generic stuff that has no flash to it. Yep, that's me.
No.
But yeah.
Gotta go that Velocity Passion style. Go all in. All in.
I mean, that said, you probably would have more fun than I would. You're playing all
Might
your...
depends who we're drafting with.
Fair, yeah. But playing the cards you like and that you have a good feelings with versus me playing, this card is so boring. But it's a good card, so maybe I'll win. Yeah. So when it comes to that, the only way I'm having fun is if these stupid, boring cards get me the win. I say stupid, boring cards, right? But they're
I was gonna say,
great.
are there any stupid, boring cards? I feel like they're all wonderful.
Oh yeah, I mean, even the Ignition, which is like super generic, debut gain +1 power to each, like still a useful card in plenty of situations, like plenty of might decks. I'll still run the Ignition. And even if I can play it back out, maybe like a Sylph Amulet or something off of it and play it again, there's still plenty of uses for all these cards, no matter the situation. Literally, I'm looking at the layout here, and some cards that don't really vibe with me are still really useful in the right setups. Like the Lady Seer here in Ferocity. I'm not a huge fan of this. It's discard a random card from your hand, give an opposing creature in this field -4 power. But you know what? You combine that with something like the Infernander, where it's like, oh, you discarded a card from your hand. You get the triggers and stuff like that. In the right setups, or the right decks, all these cards will synergize somewhere. So, there's and the Sylphunk too. The Sylphunk's another one of those Ferocity cards. When you play or discard a skill card from your hand, Sylphunk gains +1 power and give an opposing ally in this field -1 power. If you're not running discard cards, sure, he's not going to be great. But, now we're combining it with the Lady Seer. Oh, now we're combining it with the Infernander. I know these are, not really drafting tactics, but, say your Infernander is your opening card in your pack that you're keeping, because you keep the familiar and the field that you open out of your draft, right? And then the first card you see is a Sylphunk or a Lady Seer. You're like, oh, I'm already synergizing. Let's go. I'm going to take those cards because they synergize with my familiar. So while they might not be that super generic thing that I'm talking about, if you pull the right familiar, okay, you should usually, even in draft, probably build around your familiar a good bit, right? So if you see those cards and
Yeah.
you have the familiar that really, really jives with it, then yeah, absolutely. Same with the Vesperoon is another one that's like really kind of focused in. Trigger a friendly ally's debut effect in any field. Maybe you don't want to pick a certain ally normally because its debut effect is kind of meh, depending on the right situation. But like the Lunos with the Vesperoon, oh my gosh, like being able to double trigger a Lunos debut effect, like choose two of the following, draw two cards, gain 2 power, KO an opposing ally in this field, or gain block. Play it, next turn Vesperoon, use that debut effect again. Yeah, if I open a Vesperoon and a Lunos, I'm probably going to draft that Lunos. Like, depending on the situation, certain drafts just, they completely turd your whole plan on its head. Particularly mine is like, oh, I drafted this familiar. I wouldn't normally draft this other card, but yeah, I think I'm going to now. So,
That's right. Wouldn't normally draft Shadoon, but maybe you should. Just saying.
just saying.
You're
yeah.
welcome.
All right, yeah.
Pro
I'll let you have this one. You'll win this one, I suppose. All right. But yeah. So, any closing thoughts? We didn't do our introduction of how your week has gone. Mine was crazy. I had to help my father-in-law move. It was in the same like apartment complex area, but it was from one building all the way to another building, and both apartments were on the second floor with no elevator. So we had to move everything downstairs, load it on the truck, drive it across the place, and then carry it back up the other stairs. And he hadn't done any prep. Like he is like, I've got 2 days to move. We've known about this for like 2 months. I haven't cleaned. I haven't packed not one item. And I'm just like, what? What do you mean you haven't prepped at all? So it was a mad scramble over like 2 or 3 days of like trying to move everything. And it was just awful. Like my legs were killing me by the time we were done. I'm not like in great shape. I mean, I play TCGs. I fit that mass majority of players. Like I'm not in great shape. So like it was brutal. But yeah, that was my week. That is the most I'd say exciting, but it was not exciting. But that was the most interesting thing that happened. What about you? Anything interesting since we last recorded?
I traveled out of town with my husband for his work, so there was some travel in there and spending some time at a hotel, trying to get some work done at the hotel, and just getting to spend some time with him outside of work. So yeah, that was about
vacation.
the most exciting. Yeah, it didn't necessarily feel like a vacation. There was still work that I had to do and try to get done, but yeah, a little bit. So
yeah, that's kind of how we were. It's like, oh, we're traveling. Like it was like 4 hours away, so we had to go, and like we were there for all those days and like staying and stuff. Sleeping on a mat. Thankfully, he had another mattress, but on the floor because in the process of moving and stuff like that, so nothing was set up. But there was a pool, so I was like, okay, well, there's a pool, so I guess it's like being on mini vacation, even though we're going to the pool after a hard day's work, and like, oh, thank God. It's just, let me just float here in the cool water for like an hour or two. And yeah, so that was our check block of, oh, it's like a vacation because there's a pool. That was it. So not quite a vacation, but at the same time, at least you're out of the house and just like, I don't know, sometimes it's like a mental reset kind of thing in a good way or a bad way, because you could be like, that was miserable, I'm glad to be back home. Or it's like, I'm finally away from home life and like all that stuff. So it's like a little mental reset, kind of like a vacation. So I get it.
yes.
All right. But with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's Tamer Talk. Any last second words of advice or things to say?
I am very excited for draft. It's something that I've enjoyed across multiple card games. So being able to, either follow the kind of the rules laid out as we talked about them, or even as we kind of talked about a little bit, kind of creating your own rules or your own card sets to play draft from. I think is very exciting, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more draft and getting to hear what other people think about this draft style and what they do when they start getting cards and drafting for themselves.
For sure, yeah. Anyone watching, this late into the video, drop your comments. I'm definitely curious of people's thoughts on doing draft in this way, or how you would like. What are some interesting ways that you could kind of tweak the card pool and stuff like that? Like what would be some interesting stuff? Maybe not even specifically Wildhearts, but like in general of using a rule set like this of just every card ever made that you own, right, all in one. Like how could you change it up? Like you were talking about popper tournaments and things like that. So I'm curious of what other people might do with their drafts. So with that though, I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. If there's anything else that questions y'all might have, feel free to put them in the comments section below. As always, we're always quick to reply, as quick as we can be at least. And if you'd like to have a more direct line to any of us, either Don or I or anyone else on the development team, join our Discord. We have all the information there at the bottom of the screen there. I'm not going to read it off again because it's utter nonsense, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can just go ahead and look at the code there to join our Discord, as well as make sure you follow us on all the other socials. Sometimes we'll release information that might not come to YouTube immediately, or sometimes it's a little bit harder if you're making those posts, the single pictures and not videos. Sometimes that can get lost in the face or in the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff. So sometimes it might just be better to follow us on the socials when it comes to announcements and that sort of thing. But I hope you all enjoyed this, and we will see you next time.